Good afternoon. I kind of felt like I missed a trick on that walk-in. I didn't realize I'd have the music. I feel like I should have maybe shadow boxed to Eye of the Tiger, or maybe got an entourage to walk me through, but next time. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Matt Pilgrim, as the intro said. I lead our partner ecosystem across EMEA for our Adtech and Martech business, which we shorten to Martech, which feels quite relevant given the amount of disruption that we see in this space at the moment. And I'm going to talk to you about some trends that we see in digital marketing today and a few predictions that we think are going to happen in sort of 2026 and beyond. But a lot of what I talk about is going to pull us back to this need to really have a modern marketing stack to adapt to some of those needs, okay? So before I get started, I just need you all to read this slide for me, please. No, it's okay. So as I said, a lot of what I'm talking about is referencing digital marketing in general and trends that we see in this space. But I wanted to make it clear that we have some real strong credentials in the gaming industry. I've got a couple of colleagues with me who focus on this industry full time. So if you want to come and talk about how some of these trends are more specifically affecting the gaming industry or how we can help you, come see us at our booth. We also have one of the world's biggest boxes of Lego up for raffle. So and that's another good reason to come and say hello. So I'm going to start by setting the scene a little bit. From a marketer's perspective, it kind of feels like we are facing a bit of a perfect storm. We see challenges like signal loss and privacy concerns that are making some of the more traditional methods that we would use for targeting obsolete or very, very hard to do. We're experiencing fragmented ecosystems, meaning that we're seeing data silos appear across our business. And we've got this promise of generative AI hanging over us. And I feel like a lot of this is really unrealized. For me, a lot of the time it's down to us having poor data foundations in place and not being able to really take advantage of what the promise of Gen AI is bringing to marketing. And when we combine these challenges with some of the speed at which this industry is disrupting, they become even more prevalent. So this is Gordon Moore, obviously, founder of Intel and most well known for Moore's Law, which is a description of how fast technology advances. And he says it's every 2 years. Well, we're currently experiencing some LLMs that are doubling their capability every 7 months. So that means this industry is moving 3 times faster. We're seeing innovation happen at 3 times the rate that we've ever seen it before. And a Harvard professor in AI named Ethan Mollick actually made a statement last year saying that if we stopped developing or doing anything in AI right now, it would take us 10 years to see the full potential of where we already are. He revised that statement pretty quickly to say, actually, it's more like 25 years. It's quite a scary stat, right? This stuff is moving incredibly quick, and it makes some of the other challenges we're facing much harder to react to. And there's another layer as well. So if we think about the challenges that are being applied at more of an enterprise layer, this kind of compounds that challenge even more. We're hearing from the top of our business that we need to be privacy enhanced. We need to be ready for any of the new regulations that might get thrown at us. We need to be AI ready. And I'm sure we've all heard this 1,000 times, and none of us really know exactly what that means. So we're suffering from a little bit of AI paralysis, but the pressure is there to be AI ready from the very top of a business. And this desire to be open by design. Organizations now want to be able to build composable technology stacks or be able to adapt or change technology depending on the way that market changes or the organization grows. And kind of all of these things are combining to really give us that perfect storm of challenges for marketers. And at Snowflake, we've got a perspective on how this is happening, and we've got a view on what we think organizations can do to try and mitigate and adapt to some of these challenges. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, a lot of the trends and analysis that I'm talking about, we're pulling from a report that we release every year called the Modern Marketing Data Stack Report. It's based on findings from our customers, from partners, from analysts that we talk to. We try and give a view on what Snowflake is seeing in the marketing space, the challenges that they're facing, and some predictions that we'll see. This is a free report. You can get your hands on it. Scan the QR code. It's just behind the usual gated request for information, but it's a free report, and you can read it at your leisure, and you'll see some of the things I'm talking about today. But fortunately for you, to save you the time, I'm going to give you a very high-level run-through of what this report tells us and kind of some of the findings behind it. So the main thing that this report tells us, and it has done for a few years, is that we're seeing 3 real like defining forces reshaping what's happening in marketing right now. They are data gravity, privacy, and AI. I'm going to talk through them in a little bit more detail one by one. So this first force that we see is this idea of data gravity. Now, this is really just a kind of play on words, right? It's this idea that objects of a greater mass attract those of a lesser mass. We think that in the same way, large data sets attract smaller data sets, and indeed can attract applications to come and reside where that data is actually living. And this force is really a fundamental shift towards a more open architecture. For years, like the default model was to send copies of your most valuable asset, which is your customer data, out to lots of disparate systems or different SaaS tools, and that's kind of where we saw some of these data silos created. It led to like increased security risks and sometimes vendor lock-in. So this modern approach, which is kind of driven by what we call data gravity, flips this model on its head. So the goal is to really minimize copies of data, and as I said, bringing applications and other data sets to this kind of unified data and AI foundation. So it really changes the conversation from thinking about focusing on licensing costs to really focusing on things like speed and agility. And a recent survey from the State of Martech report by Scott Brinker and his team showed that around 56% of respondents were already integrating their Martech stacks with a cloud data warehouse. So this is something that we're seeing in motion right now. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of data gravity in action. So we'll talk about the sort of CDP evolution, the customer data platform evolution, and a little bit around sort of AI-driven personalization. So the CDPs have been around for a long time. Customer data platforms, by Descript, they are about bringing your customer data into one place. But in 2024, it was kind of a big milestone for the CDP market. It was their moment in the sun, their chance to shine. Because Gartner released their Magic Quadrant for CDPs, and Forrester also released a B2C wave for CDPs. So they were finally in the spotlight, but it kind of coincided with a big change happening in this market. We were seeing this CDP landscape really evolving. There's lots of consolidation, and this idea of composable CDPs started to appear. So CDPs no longer being that kind of central location for you storing your data, but instead starting to become kind of orchestration layers on top of existing data, trying to provide deeper embedding in those customer engagement platforms. And also, we see things like AI-powered personalization starting to really come to the fore because they can start thinking more about orchestration and not so much about ingestion and storage. And it's a great example if you look at the way that Optimove have evolved, in that kind of customer engagement platform space. They're able to do a lot of the functionality that a CDP would traditionally do because they have that model of kind of moving towards where the data is. And with the data sitting centrally in a data warehouse, it becomes much easier to manage one version of the truth, and it starts to really become that foundation that many different AI strategies rely on. And one of the great things that you can do with that is AI decisioning, and this is something that becomes really important when we think about things like one-to-one personalization or hyper-personalization, personalization at scale, whichever term you want to use. This is really what's going to unlock our ability to do that. And data gravity means that more organizations are really composing their stacks by combining solutions that they buy with those that they build themselves, right? So there's some really great content on this on the Optimove site if you want to go and take a look at the way that they're positioning AI decisioning. This is something that's really coming to the fore, and it's being driven by data gravity. But this kind of composable approach also requires a unified and secure data foundation. It needs a unified and secure data foundation, but it also needs centralized governance to be effective, which kind of brings us on to the second force that our report talks about, which is this idea of privacy. So big tech platforms have really become low trust environments for consumers, right? 77% of people saying they don't trust social media. We see 70% of them saying they don't trust AI companies to protect their privacy. But the fact is, trust is still completely non-negotiable, right? We need this to be active in our stacks. And one of the reasons behind this, we're starting to see privacy regulations, they've evolved and they're going to continue to evolve. We've got the California Delete Act, which is quickly becoming a sort of standard for a central system for deleting requests. One that we all know very well, Europe's GDPR. But we've seen some deregulatory pressures, so there's still uncertainty around how GDPR is going to adapt and change over the coming years. And even if we look backwards, not too far, we thought that we were facing a real privacy apocalypse until Google stepped in and offered a bit of a reprieve from the deprecation of third-party cookies. But this stuff is going to continue to evolve, it's going to continue to change, and you need to have an eye on it or be able to adapt to really be able to see where this goes in the future. So being able to manage and govern your data securely and have a clear view on things like consent are really going to be factors that determine how quickly you can respond to some of these changes that we're going to see in the market. And I think without a solid plan on how you protect your customer data, your ability to ride that wave of things like data gravity or AI, we'll talk about in a sec, are going to be largely impaired. And I don't think there's ever been a time when this statement isn't more true, right? As first-party data becomes more precious and these constraints grow, the stack that you're using, it has to have things like consent, has to have anonymization, compliance, all baked in to into the core functionality of what you're using. So privacy is no longer a bolt-on, it's absolutely a design constraint, but it can be an advantage if you get it right. So the third force that our report talks about, and I know everybody's talking about AI, so no surprises, AI is a big output of this report. We see it continuing to be one of those defining forces. But I'll start with a statistic. So this is from McKinsey. They're telling us that 75% of the generative AI annual economic value is concentrated in just 3 core business areas, okay? Customer operations, software development, and sales and marketing. So what does this tell us? Well, for me, this is a big indication that sales and marketing is really where a lot of the AI effort can see the most reward. This last category, sales and marketing, it represents the lion's share of what we see as this multi-trillion-dollar market. So you could say that by focusing on marketing, you're kind of helping to ensure that you're winning in AI. So it's a key space for us to really start to embrace some of the changes that we're seeing there. And from the State of Martech, a report that we coincide with, we're seeing about 87% of marketers now using AI assistants in their daily work. I don't know about you, but that kind of made me think what the other 13% are doing, but I'm kidding. I know there's other roles in marketing than just digital. But also 60% of organizations are also running AI applications directly on their data layer. So we're seeing the adoption of this in marketing being really fast-tracked. And so where do we see most of this happening? So this is again from our report. So there's 4 key areas of marketing AI impact that I'll draw your attention to, where we see AI having the most effect on marketing. So the first is around data management. So AI is really helping with some of that more foundational work of how we would kind of ingest and clean up data. So we've got some of the ML models now being able to do some of this ingestion and standardizing and cleansing far faster than we've ever been able to do it before, and with a lot less manual intervention. So it's taking a lot of this work away from where marketing might either be doing it or requesting it. Content and creative, I guess not too many surprises, but platforms like Getty, Shutterstock, they're now offering generative AI tools that draw on their huge database of content. And some of the LLMs are getting so good now in terms of how they can improve the writing output. These are really valid tools for marketers to start using. They can match brand, tone, and really help with the speed at which you can create content and creative. And we talked about this a little bit already. So decisioning is another key area for marketers, but AI decisioning tools are really speeding up and improving the accuracy of some of the predictive analytics and customer segmentation that you can now do. Things like attribution modeling and automated campaign optimization. It's really enhancing what we've been trying to do beforehand and enabling us to do this at scale and move much faster. And then the last one, measurement. So marketing mix modeling is back. I don't know if that gets a cheer or a sigh, I don't know. But this is always something that's been around for a while, MMM. But with what we talked about before, data silos, the complexities that we started to see, it became quite difficult actually to see a single view of how your marketing efforts were performing. But AI is really bringing that back to the fore, right? The ability to accelerate some of the analysis, enabling processing of multiple models. It means that we can start to see some of the fruits of our labor in kind of one clear view. And also the introduction of some of the AI tools now to allow you to start to interrogate data in natural language means that you can get some answers really quickly, far deeper than we've ever been able to see from just MMM. So I think some of the stats from the previous slides and some of the findings from and the data in our report, they really show that AI is no longer just for pilots or experiments. The conversation has completely shifted to how it can be leveraged across the entire marketing organization. So this is like a real revolutionary shift, right? For the first time, like marketing teams can do things like have conversational inputs, and I think this is definitely one of the biggest trends or biggest impacts for me in marketing is the adoption of natural language interfaces on top of AI. So marketers are now just able to talk to their data in very natural language and get responses and information back in a way they never could before. And this will continue to evolve and continue to disrupt. So if that's kind of what we're seeing now with AI, where do we think that it's going to go? We're definitely seeing from our report organizations start to think about moving from kind of single agent use to multi-agent use. They're starting to think about agentic workflows, A2A collaboration, and also baking in this kind of model context protocol, MCP, which is kind of the standard for how AI will talk to tools and other platforms. We're seeing this really start to take off. A lot of our customers are looking to get this baked in to try and be ahead of the game and really embrace what's coming next. This sort of leads us on to the next section around what do we think is actually going to happen in 2026 and beyond. Some just light predictions that we pulled from our report. And we've been talking about AI, so let's start there in terms of what we think some of the big bets in 2026 are going to be. This isn't a stop the press moment, I'm afraid, but for sure, as we know, the next chapter is absolutely agentic, or the preparation for agentic, right? We really see the industry moving towards this and starting to embrace it. But a key part of agentic or preparing for an agentic future is the unlocking of unstructured data. Analyzing call scripts for sentiment or images for creative personalization is what's going to really help us to unlock this agentic future. And I think as we sort of see that transition in AI, it's important to differentiate from what we've been seeing within AI to date and where we think this is heading with AI agents. So when we talk about agents, this is really about us saying you can give AI a business goal, like increase conversion, and it's just going to go off and kind of devise and execute a way to do it. But it's key to get the differentiation accurate. So I thought I'd give you a couple of examples, and you can either shout out, put your hand up, whatever, I'll just walk you through them. But I've got some scenarios, so we're really clear. Is this AI co-pilot with the human still in charge, or is this an agent doing everything for us? So you have something that summarizes your email when you ask, is this an agent or is this an AI assistant? What do you think? It's an assistant. This one, it sorts tags and routes messages continuously. It's an assistant again. Suggest SQL when you prompt it. Sorry, the last one was agentic. This one's an agent. This one's AI, sorry. Monitors pipeline health and fixes issues. It's going to be an agent. Runs a workflow end-to-end based on goals. That's going to be an agent again. And the last one, something that drafts emails while you review it, something that we all use. This is not agentic, right? This is just an AI assistant. So I think we're going to see a rise in the use of agents. Agentic workflows are really going to start to become more commonplace. And in turn, I think they're going to light up other areas of innovation, which is kind of where we see some of the predictions that we think we're going to see in the market over the next year and beyond. And that first prediction is kind of really on how the role of a marketer will evolve, right? for a long time, and for years in fact, the industry has focused on the data-driven marketer, someone that's using first-party data to really drive efficiency. The thing is, some of the more like traditional metrics, things like clicks and open rates, they're only telling us half the story. So instead of focusing primarily on campaigns, channels, or content, we think that marketers are going to be starting to consider and understanding and acting on the customer's real-time context. So we feel this is going to be a time for the rise of the context marketer in this space. And so what do we mean by this? I'm not going to read all these out. I'll let them kind of build, and you can see, give you the sort of highlight the difference between what we mean by data-driven and context-driven. But in this new environment, really success isn't going to be about pushing the right campaign. It's going to be about understanding the customer's context in that moment of engagement. And it means that we need to start asking different questions. We need to be asking things like, what is this person trying to do right now? What signals are they giving us? And what will be the most useful experience for us to provide at this precise moment? And the use of AI, some of the assistants, some of the digital agents, agentic workflows, they're all going to help to power this change. But some of the most important levers are actually within the data itself. So a lot of the information that's giving us this contextual layer is going to be unstructured data. It's going to be things like call logs. It's going to be things like feedback. So actually being able to have a data foundation that really allows you to analyze that data and bring it into the hands of the marketer is going to be key to us being able to embrace this change from data-driven to context-driven. The next important shift that we're seeing in this landscape is that the kind of paths to purchase are moving from search to chat. Now, it's important to remember, that we're a little way off kind of true agentic commerce where AI handles the process entirely. It's still a few years away, but that disruption of like discovery and research is happening now. And so this isn't quite agentic, this is more kind of AI guiding and a human still making the key choices. And we feel that research and discovery is really where we're going to see, is the area that we're going to see that's most impacted. Do you think about over the last 20 years, and we heard about this in some of the other sessions, consumers have typically been kind of discovering things through search engines, right? You type a question, you browse some sites, you compare some options, gradually move towards that purchase decision. But increasingly, we're seeing people start that journey in conversational interfaces, AI assistants, chatbots. So instead of searching, we're asking a question and we're receiving a curated answer, and it's walking us through that discovery process. AI effectively is becoming that decision interface. And so for brands and marketers, this means that the challenge is no longer just about ranking in search, but it's about ensuring that your data, your products, your signals, they're visible and trusted by AI systems that power these conversations. And so that's an entirely new challenge that we need to start thinking about. And then a third prediction here for us is that brand trust will increasingly depend on agent integrity. So as these AI agents start to become more involved in customer interactions, recommending products, they effectively become representatives of your brand. And that creates a new accountability challenge, right? So things like the AI maybe do it, that's not going to fly anymore. Like you own the output. If your agent goes rogue or it shows some form of bias, it's going to be your brand that takes the blame for this. So integrity can become your competitive advantage. As AI agents interact with those customers, trust is going to depend on how transparent, how accurate, and how responsible those agents are behaving on your behalf. And I think the use of just generic models, they're really just going to make you look like everybody else. So this kind of cookie cutter approach is not going to cut it. You need to be using bespoke data to build that real competitive edge in this space. And I think an important part of this as well is this, the fact that the idea of kind of delegated liability or data lineage, this is heavy lifting and something that marketing can't handle alone. So we really need to start seeing this idea of an agentic alliance, right? With tech, with legal, with data, with marketing, all kind of coming together to make sure that these AI systems, they're auditable, they're compliant, excuse me, and they're aligned with brand values. So there's a few predictions here that are kind of pulled out from our report that kind of talk about 2026 and beyond. But I want to bring it back full circle as we end the presentation. So I hope that you can see that some of these trends that we've talked about, they're still being fueled by those three forces that we talked about at the start. So they've been around for a while, and they're going to continue to be the facilitators of change. AI, and when we talk about these three forces, it's important to remember that they don't operate in isolation. They're interconnected, they're affecting one another, and they're going to continue to do so. In the way that AI benefits from data gravity, we see privacy as the driver for ensuring that we have those guardrails. Data gravity really being the enabler for us to get our arms around the idea of privacy. Data gravity being the real driver for the data foundation for your AI platform and AI strategies. They're interconnected, and they're going to continue to evolve. And this is where, I pull it back again to the idea that all of these strategies, all these trends that we talked about today, all the future thinking, a lot of it still pulls you back to this requirement to have a future-ready data foundation. And that's why I'm stood on the stage talking to you today, because we think that we've got a really strong answer for that, being the Snowflake platform. And look, we've got all the way to the end of my presentation. I haven't given you a single sales slide, so you can thank me for that later. But here is the only sales slide. But it's an important one, right? It's a point that I really want to make is when we talk about what Snowflake does in this space, we talk about us being the AI data cloud, in this case for marketing, for gaming, insert name, we are the AI data cloud. But we are nothing without our ecosystem. So whenever we talk about this, we are talking about our platform, and we're talking about the partners that we work with. We provide that platform foundation, but it's our ecosystem that really bring it to life. And that's never been more obvious than from the sessions today. Optimove built on Snowflake, we work together incredibly well. And a lot of the things that I've spoken about today, you can adapt for the future. You can adapt to the future by working with a partner like Optimove, that's built on Snowflake. So I hope that's been useful. I've been Matt Pilgrim. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you today. As I said before, we are here on a stand if you want to talk in a little bit more depth about some of the things we've discussed, the existing trends, future trends, just have a natter about gaming in general. You'll find us on the stand. Very grateful for your time. Thank you very much.